The crystalline ruins of what had once been Kithaeron High Command sparkled like broken diamonds across the scarred landscape of Zirian 7. Staff Sergeant Riley Knox picked her way through the debris field, her plasma rifle sweeping methodically from left to right as she followed standard patrol protocol. 3 years of war on this godforsaken rock had taught her that anything that glittered usually wanted to kill you. "Knox to base," she whispered into her comm unit, ducking behind a twisted spire of what looked like metallic coral. "Sector 7 Alpha clear of hostiles. Just me and a whole lot of very expensive rubble." Colonel Hendrick's voice crackled back through the static. "Copy that, Knox. Intelligence suggests the Kithaerons abandoned this position 12 hours ago. Look for anything salvageable, then get your ass back here before the next orbital bombardment." Riley grimaced at the timeline. Orbital bombardments had a nasty habit of arriving early, and she had no desire to become a very flat pancake decorated with alien architecture. "Roger that, ma'am," Knox out. She was about to call it a day when something caught her eye, a section of debris that didn't quite match the rest. Where most of the Kithaeron structures had been reduced to geometric fragments, this area showed signs of deliberate destruction. Scorch marks in patterns she didn't recognize. And there, half buried under a collapsed beam that pulsed with residual energy, was something that made her stomach drop. A body, but not just any body. Riley had seen plenty of dead Kithaerons over the past 3 years. Usually they were 7-foot-tall reptilian nightmares with scales that could deflect small arms fire and attitudes that could sour milk. This one was different. This one looked almost, "Well, I'll be damned," Riley muttered, keeping her rifle trained on the figure while she approached. "Either the Kithaerons have been holding out on us, or Darwin's been drinking on the job again." The being trapped under the beam appeared humanoid, with skin that had a faint luminescent quality under Zirian 7 twin suns. But what really threw Riley off were the ears, long, pointed, and definitely not standard human issue. She looked like something from Jake's old fantasy novels, if elves had been designed by military engineers and left out in a war zone. Riley's medic training kicked in automatically. Pulse, weak but present. Breathing, shallow and irregular. And completely, utterly paralyzed from the waist down. "Okay, lady," Riley said, slinging her rifle and pulling out her medical kit. "I don't know if you can understand me, but I'm going to assume you'd prefer to keep breathing." The alien's eyes fluttered open, startlingly human eyes, Riley noted, though they held a depth that seemed ancient. When they focused on Riley's face, the reaction was immediate and violent. "Velter Nesh." The being snarled, trying unsuccessfully to move. "Human filth, kill me and be done with it." Riley raised her hands peacefully, grateful for the universal translator embedded in her helmet. "Whoa there, Princess Pointy-Ears. I'm a medic, not an executioner, though I have to say your bedside manner could use some work." The alien's expression shifted from rage to confusion. "You mock me." "Only a little," Riley admitted, running her scanner over the alien's injuries. "It's a human thing. We tend to crack jokes when we're nervous, confused, or about to do something incredibly stupid." She paused, looking at the scan results, and right now I'm hitting all 3 categories. The readings were worse than she'd thought. Complete spinal severance at the lumbar region, but not from battle damage. The cuts were too precise, too surgical. Someone had done this deliberately. Riley's jaw tightened as she noticed something else, a crude sign hammered into the ground nearby, written in Kithaeron script. Her translator parsed it slowly. "Defective. Let the scavengers feast." "Son of a bitch," Riley breathed. "Your own people did this to you." The alien's face went carefully blank. "I am Commander Zarathis of the Elite Guard. I do not require your pity, human." "Good thing I'm fresh out," Riley replied, breaking open a medical stim pack. "But I've got plenty of stubborn, and right now that's what's keeping you alive." She hesitated, studying the alien's bioarmor. It was unlike anything in their intelligence briefings, sleeker, more advanced, with neural interface ports that were obviously damaged. "This might sting a bit. Fair warning, I've never performed surgery on someone whose anatomy might have been designed by committee." Zarathis actually snorted at that, a sound so unexpectedly human that Riley grinned. "There we go. Proof that pain is the universal language." Riley began applying synthetic tissue grafts to the worst of the external wounds. "So what did you do to piss off the home team? Forget to return a library book, put pineapple on pizza." "I questioned orders," Zarathis said quietly. "The bombardment of civilian settlements, the use of chemical weapons against non-combatants, The elite guard are supposed to be warriors, not butchers. Riley's hands paused in their work. And they paralyzed you for having a conscience. That's either very stupid or very evil, possibly both. It is the way of the Empire. Weakness cannot be tolerated. Weakness? Riley laughed bitterly. Lady, I've been fighting your people for 3 years. Trust me, questioning genocide isn't weakness, it's evolution. She finished with the external wounds and moved to examine the neural damage. Unfortunately, this is beyond my pay grade. I can stabilize you, but that spinal damage needs equipment I don't have. Zarathis closed her eyes. Then leave me. Your people will shell this area within hours. Yeah, about that, Riley said, checking her chronometer. We've got maybe 40 minutes before this whole area becomes a parking lot, and I have what my commanding officer would call a chronic inability to abandon wounded personnel, even if they are technically the enemy. You would risk your life for someone who would have killed you without hesitation. Riley considered this while she worked. It was a fair question. 6 months ago, she probably would have called in the location and let the artillery boys sort it out. But 3 years of war had taught her something that the military handbooks never covered. Sometimes the enemy had a face that looked remarkably like your own. Here's the thing about humans, Riley said, rigging up a portable IV from her kit. We're really, really bad at logical decision-making. It's a design flaw. We do stupid things like rescue cats from trees and help little old ladies cross streets, and apparently perform field surgery on paralyzed alien warriors in active combat zones. The sound of distant engines made them both freeze. Riley grabbed her binoculars and swore creatively in 3 languages. Well, this is awkward, she announced. We've got Kitharan hunter-killers coming from the north and what looks like a human patrol from the south. Either everyone's early to the party, or we're about to become very popular. Zarathis tried to lift her head. Leave me. Take whatever intelligence value you can from my armor systems and go. Tempting offer, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to decline. Riley was already calculating distances and cover positions. Besides, where's the fun in that? Any idiot can follow orders. It takes real creativity to completely ignore them. She began gathering her medical supplies, mind racing through possibilities. The old research station in the canyon system was 12 clicks south, abandoned for months, but it might still have power. If she could get Zarathis there. You are insane, Zarathis observed as Riley began constructing an improvised stretcher from debris and medical tape. Yeah, I get that a lot, Riley replied cheerfully. But hey, look on the bright side. If we both die horribly, at least you'll have some company for the trip. The engines were getting closer. The abandoned research station looked like someone had dropped a metal wedding cake into a blender and then scattered the pieces across 3 levels of canyon walls. Riley grunted as she maneuvered the improvised stretcher through the twisted remains of the main airlock, grateful that whoever had designed this place had been optimistic about accommodating large equipment. Home sweet home, she announced, lowering Zarathis onto what had once been a laboratory table. It's not the Ritz, but the rent's free and the neighbors are very quiet. Zarathis surveyed their surroundings with obvious skepticism. Banks of dormant equipment lined the walls, and crystalline formations jutted from the canyon rock like frozen lightning. This is a human research facility. Riley corrected, pulling out her portable generator and looking for a power coupling that wouldn't electrocute them both. According to the records, some eggheads were studying the local crystal formations before the war heated up. Something about quantum resonance patterns and interdimensional energy matrices. She paused, frowning at a connector that had too many prongs. Or maybe it was just really expensive mood lighting, hard to tell with scientists. The generator hummed to life, and emergency lighting bathed the station in a sickly yellow glow. Riley immediately began checking atmospheric controls, muttering under her breath about alien physiology and the general inadequacy of her field training. Your species adapts quickly, Zarathis observed, watching Riley jury-rig a life support monitor using medical sensors and what appeared to be a coffee maker. Adapt, improvise, overcome, and occasionally blow things up, Riley replied, tapping the makeshift display until it showed stable readings. It's the human way, though I have to admit your people's bioarmor is impressive tech. Even damaged, it's keeping your vital signs more stable than they have any right to be. Zarathis's expression darkened. This armor was my pride, now it is my prison. Riley looked up from her work, noting the bitter edge in the alien's voice. Want to talk about it? I'm told I'm an excellent listener. Also, we're stuck here for at least 6 hours while I figure out how to keep you alive, so we might as well chat. You would not understand. Try me. I once spent 18 hours in a foxhole with a guy who insisted on explaining the entire plot of his favorite soap opera. I'm pretty sure I can handle alien warrior angst. Despite herself, Zarathis almost smiled at that. Your humor is strange. That's what makes it special. Riley finished connecting the last of her equipment and sat down on a crate that might have once contained sensitive scientific instruments. So, Elite Guard, that sounds important. We were the Emperor's finest, selected not just for combat prowess but for tactical intelligence and strategic thinking. Zarathis's hands clenched into fists. We were meant to be more than mere soldiers. Let me guess, Riley said, opening a ration pack and offering half to her patient. Someone higher up the food chain decided that thinking was optional. Zarathis stared at the offered food with confusion. You would share sustenance with an enemy. You're not exactly in fighting shape right now, and I'm pretty sure you can't digest anything with this much preservatives anyway. Riley took a bite and grimaced. Trust me, I'm doing you a favor. This stuff could be classified as a war crime. The universal translator seemed to struggle with Riley's sarcasm, producing a series of confused chirps before settling on an approximation. Zarathis looked genuinely baffled. Your warriors jest about warfare. Constantly, it's either that or go completely insane. Riley leaned back against the wall. So what happened? You started asking inconvenient questions. Zarathis was quiet for a long moment. The bombardment of Kepler Station, 12,000 civilians. The tactical briefing classified them as acceptable losses in support of strategic objectives. Riley's expression sobered. You objected. I requested clarification of target priorities. Civilian populations are not legitimate military objectives under the codes of honor. Zarathis's voice grew flat, mechanical. I was informed that the codes had been revised. And when you kept pushing, Commander Veltaran had me fitted with a neural inhibitor. It severs the connection between the armor's mobility systems and the wearer's nervous system. Zarathis touched the back of her neck, where Riley could see the faint outline of an implanted device. A reminder, he said, of the price of disloyalty. Riley felt a cold anger building in her chest. That's not justice. That's just cruelty with paperwork. It is effective. So is a bullet to the head, but that doesn't make it right. Riley stood up and began pacing, a habit that helped her think. This neural inhibitor, is it permanent? The technology exists to reverse it, but only within the Empire's core medical facilities, and only with proper authorization codes. Zarathis's laugh was bitter, which I am unlikely to receive. Riley paused in her pacing, something nagging at the back of her mind. What kind of authorization codes? Command-level clearance, biometric locks, quantum encryption. Zarathis shrugged or tried to. Standard security protocols for sensitive medical procedures. Riley looked around the research station with new interest. You know, I'm starting to think those eggheads might have been onto something more interesting than mood lighting. She moved to one of the larger crystalline formations, running her scanner over its surface. The readings made her eyebrows climb toward her hairline. Well, that's not normal, she announced. These crystals are showing quantum resonance patterns that match your bioarmor's energy signature. Zarathis tried to lift her head. That is impossible. Kitharan technology is incompatible with primitive human systems. Ouch, primitive. Riley grinned. But here's the thing, I don't think this stuff is human technology either. She pulled up the research station's archived files on her portable terminal. According to these logs, the crystals predate both our species on this planet. Way predate us. The implications hit them both at the same time. An indigenous civilization, Zarathis breathed. With very sophisticated neural interface technology, Riley added, her excitement building. The research team was trying to map the quantum field interactions when they had to evacuate. But look at this, she pointed to a series of readings on her screen. The crystals respond to bioelectric fields, specifically complex neural patterns, like those produced by Kitharan bioarmor. Exactly like those. Riley was already moving toward the largest crystal formation, her mind racing through possibilities. If the original inhabitants developed this technology for neural enhancement or medical purposes. Her comm unit crackled to life, making them both freeze. Nox, this is base. Report your status immediately. Riley looked at Zarathis. then at the crystal formations, then at her comm unit. Finally, she sighed and activated the channel. "Knox here, Colonel. I'm following up on some interesting archaeological evidence in Sector 7. Archaeology? Knox, what the hell are you doing out there?" "Science, ma'am. Lots and lots of The quantum crystals had begun to sing. Riley paused in her frantic calibration of the ancient scanning array, listening to the harmonic vibrations that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the research station. It sounded like a chorus of wind chimes having an argument with a synthesizer. "That's either very good or very bad," she announced, wiping sweat from her forehead. "In my experience, when alien technology starts making music, it usually means someone's about to have a really interesting day." Zarathis had been watching the crystal formations with growing intensity for the past hour. "The resonance patterns are responding to my bioarmor's neural matrix," she said, her voice tight with a mixture of hope and fear. "I can feel something awakening in the quantum substrate." "Awakening?" Riley looked up from the jury-rigged control panel she'd assembled from medical scanners, coffee makers, and what appeared to be a very expensive paperweight. "That sounds ominous. Should I be worried about ancient alien artificial intelligences deciding to redecorate the planet? The sensations are familiar, like memories that are not my own." Zarathis closed her eyes, concentrating. Images of this place when it was whole, beings that looked like. She opened her eyes and stared at Riley, "Like us." Riley blinked. "Us as in you and me specifically, or us as in humanoid species in general?" "Both." Zarathis's expression was troubled. "The neural echoes show a species with features of both our peoples. The ears, the bone structure, but also the skin tones and facial symmetry of humans." "Great. We're dealing with the galactic equivalent of a family reunion." Riley turned back to her improvised equipment. "Well, if they left behind medical technology that can fix neural damage, I'm willing to overlook the whole mysterious vanished civilization thing." The station's power systems flickered, and new holographic displays materialized above the crystal formations. Text scrolled past in a script that resembled neither human nor Kitharan writing, but somehow felt familiar to both of them. "Can you read that?" Riley asked. "Partially. It seems to be a medical diagnostic protocol." Zarathis frowned in concentration. Something about neural pathway reconstruction and quantum consciousness integration. Quantum consciousness integration. Riley repeated the phrase slowly. "Either that's exactly what we need, or it's going to turn your brain into pudding, possibly both." Her comm unit chose that moment to crackle with an incoming transmission from an unexpected source. "Riley, Riley, are you out there?" She recognized the voice immediately and felt her heart sink. "Jake, what are you doing on this frequency?" Corporal Jake Martinez had been her best friend since basic training, and his presence on the search team was both a blessing and a complication she didn't need. "Looking for you, genius. The colonel sent us to drag your stubborn ass back to base before you get yourself killed playing archaeologist." Riley glanced at Zarathis, who was listening intently despite the language barrier. "Jake, I need more time. This site is incredibly important. More important than not being turned into radioactive dust. The orbital bombardment's been moved up. You've got maybe 30 minutes before this whole sector becomes a crater." 30 minutes? Riley felt her stomach drop. The ancient healing chamber she'd been trying to activate would need at least an hour to properly interface with Zarathis's neural implants. "Riley, talk to me. What's really going on out there?" She looked at Zarathis, who nodded slightly, a gesture of trust that somehow meant more than any military decoration. "I found something, Jake. Someone, actually. A Kitharan warrior who was left for dead by her own people." The silence on the comm stretched for several seconds. "Please tell me you didn't just say what I think you said." "Okay, I won't tell you that." Riley began frantically adjusting the crystal array's resonance frequency. "But hypothetically, if I had found a wounded enemy soldier and was currently attempting to save her life using possibly dangerous alien technology, would you still be my friend?" "Riley, you magnificent lunatic, what have you gotten yourself into? The good news is that I might have found the cure for paralysis. The bad news is that we're about to be vaporized before I can test it." Another voice cut into the transmission, rougher, more authoritative. "This is Lieutenant Tors. Knox, you will abort whatever insane mission you've assigned yourself and report for immediate extraction." Riley grimaced. Tors had never liked her, and the feeling was entirely mutual. "Negative, Lieutenant. I have a medical situation that requires immediate attention. The only medical situation I'm concerned with is the one where you end up dead for disobeying orders." Zarathis had been following the conversation through her own translation systems, and now she spoke quietly. "Your friend is trying to save you. Let him." "And let you die?" Riley shook her head. "Not happening, princess. We're going to figure this out together or not at all." The crystal formations pulsed brighter, responding to their emotional exchange. The ancient healing chamber, a cylindrical structure that had risen from the floor like a metallic flower, began to emit a soft blue glow. "Riley," Jake's voice was urgent now. "We're picking up Kitharan's signatures moving in from the north, hunter-killers, at least 3 of them." "They seek me," Zarathis said grimly. "My neural signature was tagged before I was exiled. They will not rest until I am eliminated. Then we'd better make sure you're not eliminated." Riley made a final adjustment to the chamber's controls. "The system's as ready as it's going to get. Are you sure about this?" Zarathis looked at the healing chamber, then at Riley. "If I die, at least it will be by choice. That is more than the Empire offered me. Nobody's dying today if I can help it." Riley began the activation sequence. "Though I should probably mention that my success rate with ancient alien medical technology is exactly 0%, since this is my first time. That is not reassuring." "Yeah, but my success rate with impossible situations is actually pretty good." Riley grinned as the chamber's systems came online. "Plus, I've got a theory." "Which is?" "If this technology was designed by a species that combined human and Kitharan characteristics, then maybe it was designed to work with both our biologies." Riley helped Zarathis into the chamber, supporting her weight carefully. "Maybe we're not as different as everyone thinks." The chamber sealed with a soft hiss, and Zarathis disappeared behind a wall of swirling energy. Riley watched the diagnostic displays, translating the alien readouts through sheer intuition and stubbornness. "Come on," she whispered. "Work, you beautiful piece of impossible technology." Her comm unit erupted with multiple voices. Jake warning about incoming Kitharan forces, Tors demanding immediate compliance with extraction orders, and Colonel Hendricks adding her own colorful commentary about subordinates who couldn't follow simple instructions. Riley turned down the volume and focused on the healing chamber. Inside, Zarathis was surrounded by threads of light that seemed to be mapping every nerve pathway in her body. "Neural integration at 60%, she read from the displays. "Quantum consciousness synchronization, whatever the hell that means, at 45% and climbing." The sound of engines filled the canyon, multiple aircraft approaching from different directions. Through the station's cracked windows, Riley could see the sleek forms of Kitharan hunter-killers descending like mechanical vultures. "Well," she said to herself, checking her weapon, and the healing chamber exploded outward in a cascade of light that temporarily blinded everyone within 100 meters. Riley threw herself behind a console as debris and energy patterns scattered across the research station like the universe's most expensive fireworks display. "Well," she announced to the smoking ruins around her, "that was either a complete success or a spectacular failure, possibly both." When the light faded and her vision cleared, Riley found herself staring at something that defied every piece of military training she'd ever received. Zarathis stood in the center of the destroyed chamber, perfectly balanced on legs that had been paralyzed an hour earlier. But that wasn't the remarkable part. The remarkable part was the soft golden glow emanating from her skin, and the way the quantum crystals throughout the station were resonating in harmony with her heartbeat. "Okay," Riley said slowly, "that's definitely not in the field manual." Zarathis looked down at her hands, flexing fingers that sparkled with residual energy. "I can feel them," she said wonderingly. "The memories of the ones who came before. They were our ancestors, Riley. Both of our peoples descended from the same source." "That would explain why we keep trying to kill each other," Riley observed, ducking as another explosion rocked the station. "Family reunions always get violent." Through the shattered windows, she could see the battle raging in the canyon below. Human forces had taken defensive positions among the rock formations, while Kitharan hunter-killers strafed their positions with plasma fire. It was a perfect tactical stalemate that would end with everyone dead when the orbital bombardment arrived. "We have to stop them," Zarathis said, and Riley was surprised to hear genuine anguish in her voice. "Great idea. You have a plan that doesn't involve us becoming very attractive corpses." Zarathis moved to one of the larger crystal formations and placed her hands against its surface. Immediately, the entire structure began to pulse with that same golden light, and Riley felt something change in the air around them. "The ancients built this place as more than a research station," Zarathis said, her eyes closed in concentration. "It was a peacekeeping facility, a place where conflicts could be resolved through understanding rather than violence." "Peacekeeping," Riley repeated, "like cosmic therapy sessions." "Something like that." The crystals were singing again, but this time the harmonics were spreading beyond the station, echoing through the canyon walls. The quantum field can project shared experiences directly into the neural cortex of any compatible species. Riley felt her eyebrows climb toward her hairline. "You want to force-feed empathy to an entire battle group. Unless you have a better idea." Another explosion, closer this time. Riley could hear Jake shouting orders to his squad over the comm, and the distinctive whine of Kitharan weapons charging for a major assault. "You know what?" Riley said, moving to stand beside Zarathis at the crystal array. "I've had worse ideas, usually right before I got court-martialed." She placed her own hands on the crystal surface, and immediately felt the connection not just to the ancient technology, but to Zarathis herself. Their memories flowed together. Riley's childhood on Earth's agricultural colonies, Zarathis's training in the elite guard, moments of loss and triumph, and the gradual realization that their enemies weren't so different after all. The quantum field expanded outward like ripples in a pond, washing over the battling forces below. And suddenly, everyone stopped firing. Riley felt it through the neural link, hundreds of minds suddenly experiencing what their enemies experienced. Human soldiers feeling the weight of Kitharan honor codes, and the shame of being forced to abandon those codes for political expediency. Kitharan warriors experiencing human concepts of individual worth and the burden of questioning orders. "Well," Riley said, watching through the station's monitors as weapons were slowly lowered on both sides. "That's either the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, or we just accidentally invented the galaxy's first empathy weapon." "Both," Zarathis replied, but she was smiling. Riley's comm crackled with Jake's bewildered voice. "Riley, what the hell just happened? The Kitharans they're requesting a ceasefire." "That would be the power of aggressive understanding," Riley replied. "Also possibly some very advanced alien technology that I definitely shouldn't have been playing with." Colonel Hendricks cut into the channel. "Knox, I don't know what kind of diplomatic miracle you've pulled off, but we're getting similar reports across the entire front. Kitharan forces are standing down sector-wide." Through the quantum link, Riley could sense the ripple effects spreading beyond the immediate battle. The peacekeeping field was being transmitted through Kitharan communication networks, carried by the very bioarmor that had once enslaved Zarathis's people to blind obedience. "It won't last forever," Zarathis warned, though the golden glow around her was stabilizing. "But it might last long enough for both sides to remember why they're fighting. And maybe long enough to figure out if there are better ways to settle our differences," Riley added. "Ways that don't involve blowing up entire planets." A new voice crackled over the comm, harsh, authoritative, and speaking accented standard. "This is Commander Veltaran of the Kitharan Third Fleet. I demand to speak with the human responsible for this interference." Riley and Zarathis exchanged glances. "That would be me," Riley said into her comm. "Staff Sergeant Riley Knox, at your service, though I should mention that I had some help from one of your former colleagues." "Impossible. All traitors in this sector have been eliminated." "Well," Zarathis said, taking Riley's comm unit with a grin that was equal parts warrior and diplomat, "you missed one." The silence that followed was so profound that Riley could hear her own heartbeat. "Zarathis," Veltaran finally whispered, "you were reported dead." "I got better," she replied cheerfully, and Riley burst out laughing despite everything. "Commander, I invoke the right of testimony before the Fleet Council. I have evidence of systematic violations of the codes of honor and a proposal for ending this war. The Council will never hear you. You are marked as defective." "The Council will hear me," Zarathis said, and there was something in her voice that made Riley step back slightly. "Because I am no longer bound by imperial neural conditioning, and because I carry the memories of our true ancestors, the ones who created both our species as instruments of peace, not war." The quantum crystals pulsed in response to her words, sending verification data directly into the Kitharan communication networks. Riley watched the tactical displays as ship after ship in the orbital fleet began broadcasting acknowledgement signals. "This is impossible," Velterran muttered, but his voice had lost its authoritative edge. "Lots of impossible things have been happening today," Riley observed. "I'm starting to think impossible might be overrated." 3 hours later, Riley sat on the edge of the research station's landing pad, sharing her last chocolate bar with an alien warrior who had just negotiated the first ceasefire in 3 years of brutal warfare. "So what happens now?" Riley asked, watching human and Kitharan medical teams work together to treat wounded from both sides. "Now we find out if peace is as contagious as war," Zarathis replied, accepting the chocolate with the solemnity of a religious ritual. "The quantum field can only do so much. The rest is up to individuals choosing to see each other as people rather than enemies." "Think it'll work? Ask me in a year." Zarathis bit into the chocolate and made a face that was pure comedy. "This is truly terrible." "I warned you," Riley laughed, "but you ate it anyway. Because you offered to share it with me. That matters more than taste." Riley nodded, understanding. 6 months ago, she would have called in artillery strikes on this position without a second thought. Now she couldn't imagine a universe where Zarathis wasn't part of her life. "So," she said, stretching her legs and wincing at the ache in her back, "want to help me write the most interesting after-action report in military history?" Zarathis grinned,